Hello techies, I'm Divya here. On behalf of CyberBrainer, don't you think the world of tech is evolving faster than ever? Now is the perfect time to dive in and build the skills that will take you places. With CyberBrainer, we are putting you in the driver's seat of your own future. We at CyberBrainer don't just teach your interest. We believe that knowledge is power, but it's applied knowledge that truly sets you apart. Whether you're diving into data science, mastering artificial intelligence, or exploring the world of cybersecurity, our courses are designed to give you the skills that matter. So let's jump into the session and make the future yours today. Thank you.
Let's discuss with the client libs thing today. What is client libs? Let me go to the project. What we have in EMS? Let me see. Let me just open the component. Let me go to the Tojo component. Let me create one JS or CSS. Let me just go. Let me go create a file. Let me name it as one JS. Let me name. Let me just save it and put an alert. Just. Finally, let me just copy this and paste it over here. And save it and let me rename it to 2JS. And let's say the content for this 2JS is hello 2JS. Similarly, let me create another one. Consider that these are the JS that you have to use in your component as part of your component. These are used for some styling or some manipulations. You're doing some manipulations. You are writing some jQuery thing. And all that is there inside is 3JS because the code is big. That is, you decided. They have 3 separate JS because all JS plays different purpose. What you did is you had this 3JS. Now to include this JS inside your HTML, what you will do is, let me go to the bottom and let me include it over here. How will you include it? By using the script tag? Agree with me. That's how the legacy way works. In this RC, let me just put one JS. Let me just put it out. And I know where the color was. Like that? Well, let me put it at the top. Let me put it over here at the bottom. Because JS should be at the bottom. If I go over here, I put it over here. Similarly here, I let me place 2. JS and the third one. Now, which is basically how you do or how you include the JS in any basic application or in any legacy way of working or on any of the websites you have. Agree with me. Now, if I open this component, here you have hello 1 just getting noted and 2, then 3. That's what we did. We included the 3JS, which has simply the alert. As of now, we have alert. But of course, we could have much of code inside these 3JS. Why we decided to have 3JS? Because we wanted basically because each JS serving a different purpose. That is why we had 3JS and we included it by using the strip tag. Now, the main problem with this is that if you preview, the main problem with this is, of course, you see you have to add 3 lines of code for including these 3JS. And also in the network call, If you see, if I will refresh it over here, the network call, it will go to the JS portion. JS 2, JS 3, JS. Now you would see that there are how many network calls will be there. 3 network calls will be there. This is 1. And this will be 2s. And then this will be 3s. You can see there are 3 network calls. Similarly, to confirm this, if there are really 3, then let me just inspect this. And also, you will see the strip tag will be at India. You can see first, the strip tag is here. We include the 1, the 2, the 3. There are 3 network calls for a single component. Now, if in a page we have 10 or 20 components, please note the page, and each component has around like 2 or 3s. Then in total, how many JS or CSS will be loaded? Like in total, many JS or CSS will be loaded. This is the plan. We concerned how the JS and CSS should be better managed. Where, from development point of view, we can develop it separately in separate JS, that we can have modularity with our code. Behind the scene, all the JS or all the CSS that belongs to a single component can be combined into a single code, that they should only be a single network call. Like as of now. From a development perspective, I wanted 1, 2 and 3 JS should be loaded separately. It should be developed separately. Because I want to see modularity. Like when some other developers come, they should be able to see that they only have to make changes inside the 3JS or 1JS. But behind the scene, when the code gets loaded, all the code from all the JS should get loaded in the single JS. That of course, if there are single JS, it will have to be on the single network. And that will of course improve the performance. To achieve these sort of problems, to overcome these sort of problems, we have the client libs concept in AEM. Client libs is the concept which helps us in managing our JS and CSS. How JS, how CSS are better managed in AEM is using client libs. How? Let me create a client lib. Let me get a simple kind of here. You see, there is a client lib folder. And here is one of the client. How I get to know? Not by the name, because here you see the primary type. The primary type for this will be SQL Client Library folder. You see, this is also a client library folder. This is a client library. The name of the folder is but this is not a client library folder. It's just simply an empty folder. It's a simple folder. Because to create a client library, it should be a CQ client name folder. Like here, if you will go and you have to create a client with the scope and create a node, not a folder. If you will create a folder, what will happen? Like, let me write a folder with the name todo. Then what will happen? It will create an empty folder. You see empty folder. This is not what we wanted to achieve or where we wanted to create a client lib. Let me delete this. To create a client library folder, just go to create a node. And here the name you can give any, like todo client. And here the type should be CQ client library folder. Now this folder becomes your client library folder. And below this you can manage your JS and CSS. Now the thing is, this is the name of the node, todo client. Now you have to give it name to your client. To give a name to your client, let me give a name. The name is given by a property that is categories. The name should be categories and let me name it as todo client. Todo client. I named it as todo client. I made it as a simple string, but it basically is string array. You can give multiple names to your client. Here, this is the important property. Category is equal to todo client because when you will try to call your client, you will call it by name todo client, not by the name of the node, but by this name, where the property name is categories. Categories Todo client. That is the problem when you start writing the code. These are the minor mistakes to make. That is why I prefer doing the for the passing thing, because here also, if you know, the best is the category. Now here you can have your GIS or CSS. Here let me just drag and drop all the GIS. And similarly, if you have many CS, and also you can place it over here. Now what you did is, you created your time family, you named it as Todo client, and you place these 3 GIs below this. Now it means that these 3 GIs will be managed by this client. How will the client manage them? To manage them, every client needs to file one for managing GIs and one for managing CS. And the name of the file is very specific. It should be JEXT. Similarly for CSS it is cust. Like for if you have some CSS also, as of now I'm not using CSS, but if you have some CSS then it will be sust. This is a file that will manage your GIS, and this is the file which will manage your GIS. Make sure it is all below the client library folder and there should be a name to it. And I can place any number of GIS or any number of CSS, but how will these be managed by this file? This will be managed by JEXT. And this is the remote control or the managing manager of this client, lift node.js. Now, what does gsext or what is sust will manage is? Let's see. It will manage which all GIS should be loaded as part of this client lift and in which sequence these should be loaded. Let's say I wanted to load it two JAS ones. Always provide the name of your client, lift separated in a separate line. Two JAS I added first and then let me add one is. Here I said, even if I have these 3 J's, please build a client lift folder. It doesn't matter. I wanted to load only 2 J's and from that also 2's should be loaded in the top and then the 1's should be loaded. It's like a manager of your client. Let me just close the other tabs and let me go to the next step. That is to the here inside the to jog. That is our component. And now the next step is to load our client lift. Here we can give the instruction to either when we load our client lift, then we can give the instruction, the HTML, that while loading your client lift, do you want to load both GIS and GIS? Like while calling the client lift. Basically what we do is, while calling the client lift, we mainly call our GIS or GIS, this GIS or GIS or GIS or GIS. We further do all the management. Including the client lift, we basically say why do you want to load both GIS and GIS, or you only want to load GIS, or you only want to load GIS. That we can handle. Let me just get the code. I think I'll do it. Here is the code and let me just remove this. And I simply paste it. Let me say code over here. And this code will remain all the same for, or whenever you want to include client, lift here also. What we do is we use the data slide use. You remember we use the data slide use, including the string model. Similarly, for here also we will use the data slide use and then a variable like we gave, a variable where the object of this string model gets stored. Here we created the object where the object of this HTML will get stored. This HTML, you can see the path is ligranite, slightly templated client liftomil. This path will always remain the same. You always have to use this code but you have to use the data slide use and the variable in which you want to store. The object of this. I will tell you about this as well, like here. The object of the Java file was stored. What is this? What is this? The object of this is stored. I will tell you later. Just for now, it's HTML whose object is stored. Basically, it's not HTML, it's template. I will tell you about what is it. Basically, this is also a class where there are multiple methods. I will tell you here, this is an outer box. You can see the libs path client lift to mail. And here further what you did is you use another attribute which is data slide call. This data slide call is used to call the methods of a client lift. I will tell you if this is a client lift. If this is a client lift, we are basically a type. Basically in your mind, get a picture of this. HTML is a class whose object we have created. And now the data slide call. We will be able to call the methods of it. And here this is the method name. Here we get the object of this class, Tojo inside Tojo. And here this is the method name because here we are calling it. Here we are calling it. Here we are calling like using the object. We are calling a method that is Tojo. And at the rate categories is equal to the name of your client lift. In our case, the name of the client lift was Tojo client. It was Tojo client here, Tojo client. Here, what I did is I called this template. This is basically a template. And with template, it can have multiple methods. I will tell you what is this. This is a template which has multiple methods, and within that I found one method that is case in case, and this method I also pass as a parameter. Like you have Java classes, we have Java classes, and then you have we have services. In services, we have multiple methods. We call in method, and then we also pass the parameters. The parameter name and parameter value. Let me just tell you with you about the concept of template, and then I will show you the code later. The system behind template is seen in HTML. In Sitly, you may have you want to dynamically update the content inside an HTML. Like you have a piece of code. You have a piece of HTML. Within this, you have some dynamic values whose value you want to fill dynamically. You have some values, you have some properties, or you have some keys whose value you want to fill dynamically. Maybe there is a block of HTML within which you have some classes or something like that whose value you want to pass differently when different execution happens. In that case, you will use templates. In templates, it's like we create HTML and HTML can be called from multiple HTML. See, when we use data slide include, we were statically including the HTML. And when we use this concept of template, which is dynamically including the HTML, what I mean by dynamically including is, there may be this is an HTML which has some templates and the values inside this template. We are dynamically filling by passing the parameters. I will show you the working example if you. But as of now, let's stick to the client lib thing. Let's stick to the client lib thing. To call the client lib, what we will do is we will include this template, and to call the method this, you can use either the JS. Here I told you, either you can call the JS, either you can call the CS, but either you can call both. That is all. Here in this client lib, we are building this template 3 methods. One is the JS method, one is the CSS method, and the third one is all method. By all, it means that you wanted to take both JS text and CSS text. If I write JS, then it will only trigger CSS text. And if you want CSS, then only CS text will be triggered. If I have written JS here, then it means it will trigger the JSX and further JSX will see which all JS should be loaded and which. And here we provide the client lib line. Now let me just refresh my screen and let's see if my client libs are loaded or not. Not loaded. I think some mistakes. Client libs. Those who told this category rule. Both are client libs. Third client lib name correct. Client libs. Let me make this string array. Let me get a multi. It does the name category help you give the name to your client. You can have multiple names for your client. They use this string because I just want you to single it. But I'm not sure if the string is acceptable or not. That is why I'm just trying with there's no relationship with the number of. Let's see the number or the sequence will be handled all by the JS or CS. This is what this is remote control. You can say, I'm providing the name. Save. Let's see. Now it goes. Where are we loading it? To Java. I hope in this. It's not loaded. It's like they from issue with our, but here the things are not open before. Let me do one thing. Let me just get it. Now what we are doing, see by this code, what we are doing is we are saying within this client, the JS should get loaded. When JS should get loaded, the JS.text. And when JS.text will be triggered, then firstly, then 2.js will be triggered, and then 1.js will be triggered. It doesn't matter, 3.js is there, but it's not there as part of this JS.text. Somewhere there is an issue. Why is this ending over here? This is over here. I think I'm making something. Let me just paste it somewhere over here. Or the code. There is some issue in my code. What is this issue? Oh, this is the issue. I have blown it, I'm sorry. The issue was that I was accidentally closing the tab over here. However, there was a next line where I missed the column. This is not here. Let me just refresh it now. You can see hello 2.js get loaded, and then hello 1.js is getting loaded. And there is no hello 3.js that is loaded. Now, even if I see here, you see script type is equal to like if you would type it and if you look like you've got it. Now there's no separate line for 1.js and 2.js. And also if I open this copy link, let me open it. Let me go to the network and let me just search it with torture line. Let me just load it again. If I open the code for this response, you see the code from both these years ultimately being combined into a single JSS by the name of that code of the client. And here we have the code combined into a single JS. That's what our motives. From the development perspective, the JS should be. They should be separate code in separate JS, but behind the scene, all the code should get combined into a single. That there should be less number of network, and of course, it will improve performance a lot. That's what happened behind the scene. All the code get combined into a single JS, but from development or from front-end point of view, it's all. There are 3 days. Now, if you want to load threes as well and get out at the top, then you can do threes. If I load my thing at the firstly my threes will be loaded to 2 and then 1. If I refresh it, firstly hello threes, hello twos, hello ones. And if I will inspect this, I guess refresh it again. The network. 3, 2, 1. And here you have, it will have the combined. What is all these things? And same is it CSS as well. The same is the case with CS. We are in CSS. You just have to write. You see best practices that you load CSS at the top and JS at the bottom. What you can do is you can write two jobs over here. And at the bottom you can write same code with two jobs. If you will write Tojox over here, see Tojo is nothing, but here I'm gonna get reliable name. And here I call this CSS yes or all. The third is all if you wanted to call both. Even if I will call here, then both JS and CS will be loaded, but CS will be empty. If I were here, what I use is Tojol. Now you see, first you get 3, 2 and 1. But in CSS there was nothing because CS text is empty. It won't load anything. And also if I will search. Inside the CSS also, here you see, is it Tojas also loaded and the response for this is empty. If I will go over here and you will see them now, there will be 2 network calls. One will be for CSS, there will be for CS, and then it will be for JS. Now, what we did is we used all over here. This is the purpose of time leaves in AEM of managing your JS and CS and some of your SVG's basics, mainly the CSS and JS only. How would you manage those? It is being done over here. Let's move further. On this client, there is one more thing. There is a property. Let's say there was already a client lib. We just copy this and paste it inside the title component. Paste it inside the title. I'm just considering an example that there was an old Tojo lib. Here, there was already a time live already there. Now and here I had, let me rename it to Forts. For you. This Forts was already there and there was another 5its. Sorry. Let me just save it. There was 4 and 5 and let me delete this. Now in the JSext, what I can do is I will load the Forts. 1, 2, 3 Forts. Now this client was already there. Let me name it as Tojo, Let me name it as Tojo. Old Tojo client lib. The name for this was old Tojo. This JS, this client was already there. And this is newly created. Now we realize that its 4 and 5 is what we needed. It is part of what this component has, a new Tojo word. Oh, as part of what Tojo word component as well. Now one way is that you can copy paste this 4 and 5 as part of this client. And then you can open this JSext and add the reference for them. And we're here 4 and 5 as well. But this is not a good solution because that is the tendency of code. The best is we can draft for the code of one client lib inside another. How we can do is, we can use it the embed way. Through embed, what will happen? Ultimately, the code from the other client lib gets combined into my own client lib. Here if I will use embed and here the name was old client lib. In here it's because we can embed the code from multiple client lib. What I said is that the code from old Tojo client lib should get embedded inside my current plan. If I will go over here, you will see 4 and 5 will be loaded. And then of course, you will see it should also be loaded. If I will, I did not updated the code over here. Let me say the code for this one. And this equals. Again, now if I will refresh it, your 5 and 4 will be loaded. And then your 1, 2, 3, you can see hello 4s. Hello 5s. Hello 3, 2, 1. And you see, because in the JSGC, we said first the 4 should be loaded and then 5. That is why first the 4 loaded and 5 and then our client. And here, if you will see, here the code will be combined into a single JS. Now there will be no one, there will be two networked for this and the other. But behind the scenes, what we wanted to achieve was that the code from these should get combined into this one. Only this is what will happen. This is what happened. This is what you will see now. And it would be only for network. You can see there's only one JSNet and one CSS. And if you wanted to see the response for this in the network, here you will go into the JS. And if I will see the response, you can see now the code from the old client also got combined into my own client. This is the embedded way of working, where you want to embed a code from one client into your image set of written like duplicating the code. Now there's another property in client that is called as dependencies. These embedded and dependencies are used interchangeably. Dependencies when I add this. Here it will behave similar as embedded, but here I'm saying that my Tojo client lib is dependent on old Tojo client. When I say dependent, it means is my client is dependent on you. Firstly, you should be loaded and then I will be loaded. Here you will see there will be two separate network calls. We are mostly network will be for old to look like this and it will be for this. You see it's only for 5 and then here you will see here firstly there is a network call for old to the client lib and then to the world. Sorry, let me just show it to you over here. Because there looks like some JS has not been cleared. Here you see that two network calls when it's for old to the client lib and then it is to the client. Similarly for CS. Now that doesn't get combined into one, but the code will remain separately, will be loaded separately for each client. Because here I said, I am dependent on you for 3. You should be loaded, then I should. There's multiple more reasons when you will use dependency and when you use embed. I told you how you will use it, but now I'm giving it for you to identify when you should use embed and when you should more use dependencies. I told you the primary purpose, but there are some more reasons, like will I consider there is another client, lib. This now that there are 3 client libs. This is old client lib. This is for the client lib, and that's the reason. Old client lib. The client lib is dependent on old to the client lib. Old to the client lib is dependent on old one. In those sort of, when there are multiple client lib, in those sort you have to properly decide which one you should use. There is a reason when you should use dependencies and when you should use embed. I told you that it's working behavior. Now just search and find out more about this. There's another property, and which is very important, which is called as allow proxy. Here, if you will see in one of the client lib, there was a property that was allow toxic too. If we have A, B, C, B is embedding the code from A and C, is embedding the code from B and C, we'll have the code of all A and B. But dependencies also, if A, B is dependent on A, C is dependent on B, then firstly A will be loaded and B and then C. But when you use these interchangeably, like B is embedding, the code from A and C is dependent on B. When these sort of scenario comes, and you have to just go and see how these things work. Because when this dependency and when this embed are used in a combination of 3, these are used like one is dependent on other and one embed the code for another. Then these things behave like differently. That's what I would say a bit on this. But yes, in case A, B, C is there, B is embedding, C is embedding the code of B, B is embedding the code of A, then finally we will embed the code of both these. But these mainly becomes the interview questions. As I told you, like C dependent is when you say that like the method in a client lib, which whose output you need to use in B, then of course you will use the dependency way of working. Firstly, you want that it should get loaded and only I should work. There is a strict behavior. In that case, only dependency should be using embed. No, but embed, we work in our way. But and how? Behind us in embed the code. We don't know if the code for that will be placed above, that will be down, and we don't know. What we dependency? It's strict that if my client lib is dependent on your client, then firstly your client will be loaded and then mine. But with embed, it's basically embed the code. Now, if we have much of code in 2 client lib, then in what way it will embed ultimately behind the scene? How? In our case, we're just simply one line that is allowed. That is why you were able to see that firstly the other one get loaded and then mine. But it's not the case when you have many methods inside both the client libs. That would not be the case. How it will embed the code, we don't know. That is why can dependence should be strictly used when you know that this line, this j should be loaded at the top and then only my j should be loaded. That is your strictly used dependency. What embed should be used? These are all independent. Anyhow, these work. It's all independent because all the methods are behaving independently. In that case, of course, you can use. This is the client that we create, but you need to clear the client. This is a bigger point. This is the command that I have to load, and I have to load all CSS to get work, or only JS, or only CS. In that case, you do not have to write this line again, the first line again. I'm sure you have already included. In that case, you can close it over here, and you can include that multiple like here. And what I will do is I will have one tag one slide tag and data slide, and I will have another one and another one. And then ultimately I will put the parent slide. I was having one. That is why I am going to single. Correct. Now there will be another slide. Now the most another important property that is allowed. You see, there is an allowed property over here. If you see allowed property, this allowed property is being used only on the publisher instance. What was the reason? What is the reason? Is you have your client libs stored inside the app hierarchy. You can see this is a part of my code base. Since this is my JS and CSS are there as part of my, you can see it's loaded as part of my app due to content title app. Now what we do is here. I told you inside libs hierarchy all our code is stored. Agreed with me. Now, since all our code is stored inside the app hierarchy, then why should we give an access to the app hierarchy to the user? Here, when we work on the publisher instance and when the end user come, they should not be able to access the app hierarchy because the app hierarchy is there. Our code is stored. And if we will give an access to the end user and do the app hierarchy, then it means that we can somehow, with some tools, they can go and see what all is there inside the app. We can expose our code and do anything with our code. They can do some manipulation. They can do anything. Even if we give them the read, then also it's very harmful. And the access to app hierarchy, because the time we want to give the access to the app hierarchy to the end user. This is how this will be loaded on the end user browser. Because these has to be loaded into the end user browser. It means the end user need to access to this path. It means, of course, we cannot magically give the access to a particular path. We have to give the access to the app hierarchy. What the most we can do is we can give the access to app hierarchy. Instead of giving the access directly to the app, we could have given the access to the apps. But of course that is also harmful because there's already much of code. Because the app is much of code. It is why what we do is here we use this property, allow the boolean to. What happens is we never ever give access to the app hierarchy to the end user. The app hierarchy is always restricted from accessing to the end user. And when we use this property, allow the boolean q, you will see this client name. It's not boolean q, sorry. It will be loaded as a separate path. Here as of now, you see it is loaded as apps. -app/todo. It will happen, it will. When we add this property, it will start loading using a different path that is /.client. If I refresh it, you will see your guests are loading. That's great. And let's if you will see how they are loading. It will be loading not with the /app, but with the /path. You see /.mainQ. CSS is not effective because we are only loading. We are loading all but nothing. Is that CSS is behaving like it? If I will load this only here, you will see that the CSS also needs to be supported. I think that is what's loading with the app hierarchy. Here you will see all the C, S, yes will be loaded by the. Why is this JS loading as /app? Because I did not put the app in the client allow proxy over here. I will put allow proxy in my own client name as well. You see old total client name is still loaded as /app, but the newer one loaded with /.mainQ. But now, since I added this property, allow property to over my old voodoo here, this will also start loading as slash dot. We do not provide the extra to the sorry at the end user. That is why to load it using a separate path, a different path which is accessible to end user within the path we use this property, allow property. And you can use it on the author publisher, but you should use it on the publisher because on publisher only the end user lines. What are you doing? This is very important property, and this is always like an interview question. What is the purpose of allow proxy property? Always remember not with a slasher, but with PTC dot. Cliently path is how your client is still loaded. That's great. We covered a lot of client live. Let me just show you one more thing. Let's get back to that dialog thing and let me show you one more. Here you have dialog. You have the dialog for this. Let me go to the edit mode and let me open this. And let me open this. Here you see there are many fields. Sometimes we are done with client list, but yes, there's some more to the client list. That's what I'm showing you. You have this dialog. Now in the dialog, you want to do some manipulation, like author says. Seaman says that I have fields over here, but I wanted to show and hide some fields. Let's say there is this and gawk is made. If you take this male, then the name and address should be shown because for female we do not want to expose the field. For male, we want to show these two fields. For female, we want to hide these two fields. In the dialog, we want to show hide. Basically, we want to do some manipulation. Again, to do the manipulation in the dialog, you can use the client list. You have to write a jig for that, but basically you have to write a jig for that. But when you will write a jig, where you will write it inside, from this way you can see, it's all the HTML tags. When you want to show hide, it will all use the jig for everything. But to write the jig, you have to write a jig, and where you will write it is, you will write it just inside a client list. Here, what I'm doing is I'm just copying in one of the client lists that I've just written. And let me paste it over here. And let me save it and rename it to let me say it's a dialog. It's for my dialog. Let me name it as dialog client list. And let me give it in categories, proper categories name. Let me remove just for the properties. This is what I don't use now. And the dependency, let's say this is dialog. This is the name that I give. Now let me remove the CSS because here I want some chairs and let me have just single chairs, delete and delete. And let me give some good name to this like plugins. Some plugin because plugins. And in this plugins, in the JSPN 6, what I will do is I will mention the plugins. Now this is my client list whose name is dialog. I have the JSPN 6 website plugins is loaded on it. I will cite the code for this. I have it with me. Let me just get it from here. I wrote it somewhere over here. Here I have it. Let me just copy it. Let me just paste it over here. See, this is simple with some AEM specific code. I will show you. Firstly, let's see what we did in the client. We get this client, we name it as sorry, not this, it was this. Where is ours? Here I have. I named it as dialog client and this is the plugin, but JS where I wrote my code. And to load this, I use plugins over here. Now my client list is ready. And this is some code over here. But I will show you about this code in a minute. But firstly, we again have to trigger this client. You're in your client with HTML. Sorry, we already know that this was the way. This was the way where we triggered our client. But this is we have created for doing manipulation. That the dialog, it should not be loaded inside that chamber, but it should only be loaded for dialogues. Because our dialog only makes the use of it. And dialogues are not loaded on publisher instance. See, if I will include this client with the dialog, like in my HTML, it will be loaded on my publisher instance as well. But this is not the use case because I do not to load this client lib on the publisher because the dialogues are only used on author. I only want this client to be specific to my dialog, and that should only be loaded for my dialog. To load my client lib or my dialog, what is the name? It is dialog client. Let me just copy this. That I won't make many mistakes. Load inside the dialog in the root. In the root of the dialog, just add this property, which is extra client lib. And sorry, extra client lib, and it will be string and the name of the client. To this way, I'm saying what is the client lib that should be loaded. It is a string array. If you wanted to load multiple client lib with the string array and further, you have this. Plugins will be caught. Let's firstly remove all the code and let's say if your hello heel will get loaded when you open the dialog or not. Extra client lib is an out-of-box property which helps you in loading the client lib for your dialog. Now here, what I did is inside the plugins, I simply put this alert, and if I will now refresh my page and will open the dialog, let me remove this client command because it will keep on loading, and let me remove this item. Let me just for now, how can I do? I'll let you do that. And if you will open the dialog now, let's say if our alerts comes up, alerts didn't came up, which means our dialog, our client, is still not loaded. What was that? This is our dialog depend. Oh man, I did this properly it should be in the categories. Why is it in the dependencies of both? Shit, this property should be there as part of our dependencies. Let me correct this. This is our here. Let me give it a category and dialog client. I mistakenly used the dependency property where it should be category and by the string as it was string. Let's start with string and dialog client, and that's what I'm loading over here. Dialog client, let's try now. It's still not loaded. Extract client clip. That's what is the property name. Let me give it. The string network extract client clip. Can't hold it. Let's try and move that. And dialog line will be added also. We just save it. Extra client. Lame be a lib. Again, dialogue like that. What is the name? Categories? Let me give this also. Getting these things. You're this. This is something. Let me. Sometimes this happens. Let me delete and copy it from here. And we sit over here. We sit over here. See where and change from Tojo client to dialog. Now I'm saying plugins has this alert only. And my dialog also is exactly dialog client, and this is the main category. Let me screen my browser. Let me just do, still not loaded. See something wrong with the name of the property. It's like a pink clip. Client lips. What I'm doing. It's a client. See, that is my best is. Delete this and save it. It should not. Now here it came. Now I will face a whole code. Let me just change that thing from there. Now what is this JSA? What I'm trying to do is see what all are the fields. If you have to get value of the field, how you can get it? Here I'm saying that the name is equal to this. That is what I can use. Let me just read my code and then I will show it to you. How can I rate? The value of this name is equal to dot slash full name, dot slash full name. And let me hide the age. How will you get the age? How will you hide the age is by reading the age property. This is over here. I'm going to read name is equal to dot age. That's what I will do. You can see, let me just keep showing it inside the same way. What I did is this is a simple jQuery code, how you initiate your jQuery. Here I use when the document is. As I said, when my document is my dialog, in this case, when it will be. There is an event in dialog with the foundation content loaded, which says when your dialog will be loaded. In our like here, I said a $document on foundation or the foundation dialog is an out-of-box event. If you will search on the load, on that UI dialog load event, then it will give you like foundation content. I'm showing when my dialog will be loaded, and I know that even to be triggered and on doing this, I will get this e.target from here. I will get the dialog. From this e.target, that event that we get triggered, which is dialog loading. Here I will get my dialog element. Now here I check if my dialog element has been completed loaded. The length is. If my dialog has been completely loaded here, I take the Coral common ready. Here I hear this means it's an out-of-box method. This method which helps us in checking if the dialog, of course we know that dialog has been loaded, but are all the fields within the dialog are also loaded or not. Once all the fields are loaded inside the dialog, here my init method and pass the dialog. This is my AEM specific code, and within this also this event is used when the dialog will be loaded. From e.target, I find I got my dialog element, and here I take. This length is simply g-key thing. Here I check that if this element has some value, has some length in it or not. And here I checked if all the fields in this dialog are loaded or not. Once I see that all the fields are loaded, and what I did is I pass my dialog element, and within this init method, in this init method, I receive the dialog element. And within this dialog I found, I tried to find all these fields, and there I stored all the value of these fields and said this is male. I said it's male. How did I get these male? It is my just inspecting this, and I tried to find which is the unique value. You see, this name is equal to is male is unique. That's what I get it from here. Similarly, to get the unique for this full name, what I did is I looked and see the unique for this will be the name, because name is something that will be unique to each and every element in your dialog. This is how I look for this name. Inside the dialog, the name is equal to full name. In the dialog, I find the name is equal to full name is equal to age, and that's what I stored over here in these three. Now here I stored this is male inside the support. I can indeed is male, but I'm not changing it. I changed the is male now inside the support, and I said firstly call the handle support method. And also when this box is made is seen, when it is clicked or unclicked, and also on change, also for this handle support. Why initially call this? Because when my dialog will be loaded and also it should call, and when the dialog is open and then I'm switching on and off the checkbook and also it should go. And here I'm taking it. Box is selected. I am hiding the name, and this is basically age over here, and similarly name, and again the address is again the age. I'm hiding the parent because here if you see I am searching the name is over here. But I want to hide parent as well, because it will only hide this and not be, and parent is my name. Label will still be on my name field. Name label won't be on. That is why I got this element, and from here I get the element, and I hide this wrapper, complete wrapper. All these fields are surrounded by wrapper. You see, all these fields are surrounded by a form, and I hide one of this field paper that my label, as well as the field, should also be. If I refresh my days, let me go and open this. And now you can see now when I am in, when the mail is name and address should be shown. When the mail is not there, then there is, that is. jQuery, it's simple jQuery after this. Foundational content loaded and how you use this. Please do like, share and subscribe to our channel.